Studio One 6.5 is here, and it's going to be associated with just one word. Now, that word has been met with skepticism in the past in the audio production community. So I want to ask you a favor. When you hear this word, if you find yourself wanting to back away from the video, could you just hang in there for a second for me? Because I think there's some information you may want to know. Do we have a deal? Awesome, thank you. Let's do this. That one word is Atmos. Now, although there are some non-Atmos related features in this release, it really does dominate. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, hey Mike, I don't even have an Atmos setup, so how can I even test it? I've got some important information for you. Even with an ordinary audio interface and a standard pair of stereo headphones, you can still test out the Atmos features in Studio One 6.5. Now, you won't get the full experience of Atmos with stereo headphones, but you'll be surprised. You get a decent sense of it when you test these features out. And as well as that, you can also export Atmos mixes from Studio One. Now, I've already made a tutorial about how to do this. It's really quite quick and easy in terms of setup and a bit of fun, I have to say. You can follow this link here if you want to look at that tutorial now, or there's a link in the description down below. Now, you may also have heard all about Atmos, but decided that it's just not for you. It's not what you want to release your music on. Well, I've got an opinion about that at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. You also may be in the group of people who are thinking, Mike, what the hell is Atmos? Well, let me explain. In a traditional surround sound setup, we will have two speakers at the front, left and right, so that we can position things along the left-right axis. In addition to that, we normally have two speakers at the back so that we can position things also along a front-rear axis, so we can position in those two directions when we're mixing. Now, often these speaker setups will also have a center speaker at the front. So in total, we've got 5 speakers. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Dolby 5.1 surround sound. Now, the 5 in that number indicates those 5 speakers or those 5 channels. The 0.1 indicates the presence of a subwoofer. This is a non-directional speaker, so it's treated a bit different to the other ones. Now, in addition to this, I'm sure you've also heard of Dolby 7.1, for example. With this, we have an additional 2 speakers at the sort of mid, left and right. This makes it a little bit more accurate for positioning things and is perhaps a little bit more suitable in larger rooms. But as we can see, we're basically working on these 2 axes, however you say that, let me know. So we've got the left and right and the front to back. With Atmos, we add a 3rd dimension. Elevation or height, how high things are placed in 3D space, and that is the major advantage of Atmos mixes. There are 3 new core interfaces relating to Atmos in the new Studio One 6.5. The first is the Dolby Atmos renderer. Here we can find things like metering for our Atmos channels and also a 3D representation of exactly where everything sits in our 3D space. The second interface relates to the first method of panning that we can do, and that is the surround panner. Now, when we're talking about Atmos, you'll often hear the term bed used, or beds. You can think of this like channels. When we're doing a stereo mix, we have a left and right channel. Well, beds can be thought of in the same way as that. And when we're using the surround panner, we're basically pushing our signal from that instrument or part to those various beds in different proportions. The third interface relates to the second type of panning that we can do, and that is object panning. Now, this is a little different, although the results are pretty much the same, in fact. With this, we can create objects, say like a guitar or the backing vocals, and we can move those around in 3D space. Now, there is a slight technical difference between the outcomes of these two types of panning. I'll invite you to follow the link in the description for that, for a proper explanation, better than the one that I could give you. Now, in case you think Presonus have been slacking, they They've also updated some of the plugins in relation to this spatial panning. There's also support for third-party plugins that use this type of planning, and there's some new plugins as well in there which make use of these new features, as well as some new convolution reverbs for a new version of Open Air. The list kind of goes on with that. Now, outside of Atmos features, there are a few new features in Studio One for this release. A few small things, minor things relating to sort of mixing and arranging. Quite a lot of new features for the score editor, if that's your thing. And also there's ARA or ARA support for the project page as well now. Now, as well as Studio One 6.5 being released today, I am also launching the Studio One Revealed Facebook group. I would love for you to follow the link in the description and join me over there. My hope is that although it may not be the biggest Facebook group relating to Studio One, it will be the friendliest and most helpful, especially if you're new to home recording or Studio One. I urge you to head over there so that you can not only learn from me, but also learn from your peers. So I have a firm belief that 99% of the quality of your production comes from the song and the performance. So I don't know that I'm convinced that moving things around in 3D space in the long term is a big bonus for me as a listener. However, I'm super glad that Presonus have implemented it in this version. Why? Because it does seem that to some degree the industry is moving towards having Atmos mixers a normal output from studios. And I would hate to think that there are professional or home studios out there who have an Atmos setup and they're being forced away from their favorite DAW because it doesn't have Atmos features. So for that reason, I think it's a great decision by Presonus, and I'm super glad to see it there. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Now, the proof is really in the pudding in terms of these features. So I do urge you to follow this thumbnail for my tutorial on how to set up Atmos in Studio One and test it out just using an ordinary audio interface and a pair of stereo headphones.